She was the ultimate icon of beauty, glamour, and desire. To the world, Marilyn Monroe shimmered like a diamond, her smile intoxicating, her presence magnetic. But behind the glitter of Hollywood and the endless camera flashes, Marilyn was a woman trapped in an endless cycle of longing, betrayal, and heartbreak. For every red carpet moment that immortalized her as the blonde bombshell, there was a night spent alone, haunted by the ghosts of love gone wrong. Marilyn's life story is often told as a rise to fame and a tragic fall. But hidden beneath that narrative are the relationships that left deep scars, scars that never healed. Her affairs weren't just love stories, they were obsessions, struggles for freedom, and desperate attempts to feel worthy in a world that constantly reduced her to a symbol rather than a human being. These affairs brought her joy for fleeting moments, but they also became the very chains that weighed her down. Joe DiMaggio's suffocating jealousy, Arthur Miller's cold indifference, the Kennedy brothers' dangerous secrets, and the fleeting flings with men who only saw her body. Never her soul. Each affair left Marilyn with a deeper wound, until there was nothing left but pain beneath the flawless image. And so, as we unravel the 5 affairs that haunted Marilyn Monroe forever, we are not just recounting scandal or rumor. We are stepping into the hidden heart of a woman who desperately wanted to be loved, but who was betrayed time and again. Her story is not only a Hollywood tragedy, it is a haunting reminder of how the brightest stars can be destroyed by the shadows of their own desires. In the early 1950s, at the height of her rising fame, Marilyn Monroe met baseball legend Joe DiMaggio. On the surface, they were America's golden couple, the all-American sports hero, and the radiant Hollywood starlet. When news of their relationship broke, fans and the press treated it like a fairy tale. DiMaggio, quiet and reserved, seemed like the perfect counterbalance to Marilyn's dazzling, chaotic world. For a while, she allowed herself to believe that this was the love she had always longed for. But beneath the glossy headlines and the carefully staged photographs, the truth was much darker. Joe DiMaggio was fiercely jealous, unable to cope with the fact that his wife was desired by millions. While the public saw a charming couple in love, behind closed doors, Marilyn faced a man consumed by insecurity. He wanted her to give up acting, to abandon the very career that had given her life meaning, and retreat into the shadows as his obedient wife. The breaking point came in 1954, when Marilyn filmed her now iconic scene in The 7-Year Itch, the moment where her white dress blew upward over a subway grate. The image would become immortal, but for Joe it was an unbearable humiliation. Reports say he was enraged by the scene, furious at the crowd of men cheering as his wife stood above them. That night, when the cameras stopped flashing, their marriage imploded. Within 9 months, Marilyn filed for divorce, citing mental cruelty. Yet the story didn't end there. Despite their divorce, DiMaggio never truly let her go. He remained obsessed, following her life from the shadows. Some say his jealousy morphed into a kind of tragic devotion. After Marilyn's death in the year 1962, it was Joe who arranged her funeral, keeping it private and excluding many of the Hollywood elites he believed had exploited her. For 20 years, he sent roses to her grave 3 times a week, a haunting gesture of love and guilt intertwined. For Marilyn, Joe DiMaggio represented the paradox of her romantic life. He offered the promise of stability, of being cherished by one of America's most admired men. But that promise was poisoned by control, violence, and the crushing expectation that she should shrink herself to fit into his world. Even after she escaped him legally, the ghost of that marriage followed her. She could never fully escape the way Joe's love turned into a prison. This affair wasn't just a failed marriage. It was the first great wound that reminded Marilyn that love, even when it came wrapped in admiration and devotion, could still destroy her from within. It was a scar she carried into every relationship that followed. When Marilyn Monroe met Arthur Miller, it seemed like destiny was finally offering her something different. Miller was not a jealous athlete or a fleeting fling from the Hollywood circuit. He was a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, an intellectual celebrated for his sharp mind and moral convictions. To Marilyn, who longed to be seen as more than just a dumb blonde, Arthur represented validation. He saw her as smart, sensitive, and capable of more than the studio system allowed. Their romance blossomed in the mid-1950s, and by the year 1956 they were married. For Marilyn, it felt like a turning point. She wanted desperately to reinvent herself, to shed the shallow roles, and become a serious actress. Miller seemed to believe in that dream, and for a brief moment, she thought she had found her salvation, not just a husband, but a mentor, a partner, and an anchor in a stormy life. But reality, as always, was far harsher. Marilyn's insecurity ran deep, and Miller's intellectual superiority often made her feel small. In her private journals, Marilyn confessed that she had read notes Arthur had written about her words that shattered her. He described his doubts about their marriage, his disappointment in her fragility, and his frustration with her dependence. For a woman who craved acceptance, this betrayal was unbearable. Their relationship grew strained under the weight of her mental health struggles and his cold detachment. On set during the filming of The Misfits in the year 1960, a movie Miller wrote for her, the cracks in their marriage became painfully visible. She arrived late, medicated, exhausted, while Miller drifted further into resentment. What was once love had soured into indifference. The set became a battleground, not just for art, but for the last fragments of their union. By the year 1961, the marriage collapsed. Marilyn filed for divorce, her dream of being the muse of a great writer reduced to ashes. For her, Arthur Miller embodied the cruelest kind of heartbreak. He had given her hope that she could be loved for her mind, not just her beauty, but then he withdrew that love when she needed it most. And yet, even after their split, Marilyn carried Miller's shadow. In interviews and in her own writings, there was always a longing for the man who had once believed in her potential. His rejection deepened her feelings of inadequacy, reinforcing the idea that she would never truly be enough, not for Hollywood, not for men, and not even for herself. Arthur Miller wasn't simply a failed marriage. He was a reminder of everything Marilyn craved, but could never hold on to: respect, stability, and a love that looked beyond the surface. When he let go of her, it wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the confirmation of her greatest fear, that even the people who seemed to understand her eventually turned away. By the early 1960s, Marilyn Monroe was no longer just a movie star, she was a cultural phenomenon. Her every move was watched, her every word dissected. And yet, in the midst of her turbulent marriages and crumbling self-image, she found herself drawn into the orbit of the most powerful man in America, President John F. Kennedy. The rumors of their affair have become legend, shrouded in secrecy and speculation, but what is undeniable is the intensity of their connection. To Marilyn, John F. Kennedy was the ultimate forbidden romance, charming, magnetic, and untouchable. He represented excitement, power, and validation on a scale she had never experienced before. To be desired by the president was to feel, even for a moment, that she was truly special. Their encounters were whispered about in Hollywood and Washington alike, but one moment cemented the myth forever. Madison Square Garden, May the 19th, 1962. In front of thousands, Marilyn sang, "Happy Birthday, Mr. President," her voice breathy, sultry, dripping with innuendo. The image of her in that skin-tight, sparkling gown became an instant scandal. The performance wasn't just a song, it was a public display of intimacy that the world could not ignore. But beneath the glamour and intrigue, the reality was devastating. To John F. Kennedy, Marilyn was little more than a beautiful distraction, a fleeting indulgence in a life surrounded by power and politics. For Marilyn, however, the affair was another desperate grasp for love and recognition. She hoped, perhaps foolishly, that she could be more than just a secret, but Kennedy could never give her that. He had a wife, a family, and an image to protect. Marilyn was always destined to remain in the shadows. The secrecy, the fleeting nature of their meetings, and the imbalance of power all weighed heavily on her. Friends close to Marilyn said she often felt used, discarded after moments of passion. For a woman already struggling with loneliness, the affair only deepened her sense of being unworthy of lasting love. And then there was the danger. Being linked to the President of the United States meant being entangled in a web of political risk. Conspiracy theories still swirl around Marilyn's death just months after the Madison Square Garden event. Some believe her knowledge of the Kennedy secrets made her a liability. Others think she simply could not bear the weight of being hidden and discarded once again. Regardless of the truth, Marilyn's affair with John F. Kennedy was not a fairy tale. It was a haunting reminder of how she was always desired but never truly valued. To the world, it became a glamorous scandal. To Marilyn, it was another heartbreak, another confirmation that she was destined to live and die as an illusion, never a reality. If Marilyn's alleged affair with John F. Kennedy was intoxicating, her rumored connection to his younger brother, Robert F. Kennedy, was devastating. By the year 1962, whispers were everywhere. Marilyn Monroe was entangled, not with one Kennedy, but two. To this day, the details remain murky, hidden behind layers of secrecy, denials, and conspiracy theories. But what is clear is that Robert Kennedy, charismatic, ambitious, and deeply embedded in the political machine, became another figure in the tragic tapestry of Marilyn's love life. Some biographers claim that Marilyn and Robert shared stolen moments together, while others insist the relationship was exaggerated by gossip. But to Marilyn, perception mattered just as much as truth. Whether fleeting or real, the rumors tied her even tighter to the most powerful dynasty in America, and that came with consequences. She was no longer simply Hollywood's most glamorous starlet. She was seen as a liability, a woman who knew too much. For Marilyn, Robert Kennedy may have seemed like a chance to hold on to what she had lost with John, a new source of affection, a fresh promise of intimacy. Yet, like his brother, Robert could never give her permanence. He, too, had a family, a reputation, and a future to protect. Once again, Marilyn found herself in the role of a secret, a shadow behind closed doors, never the center of anyone's world. This left her increasingly isolated. Friends reported that she began making late-night calls, her voice filled with desperation, hinting at betrayals and broken promises. She confided to some that she felt tossed aside, used by powerful men who would never risk anything for her. The woman adored by millions was, in her private life, disposable. And then came the darkest turn. Just weeks before her death in August of 1962, rumors spread that Marilyn had threatened to go public with her affairs with the Kennedys. Whether true or not, the possibility alone was dangerous. To expose the president and his brother in such a scandal could have shattered careers and shaken the foundations of American politics. Some believe this made her a target, her silence demanded at any cost. When Marilyn was found dead in her Los Angeles home, the official cause was probable suicide. But the Kennedys' names immediately surfaced in whispers of conspiracy. Was she silenced because she knew too much? Did her broken heart and unfulfilled desires finally consume her? The truth remains hidden, perhaps forever. What is undeniable is that Robert Kennedy, like his brother, became another ghost in Marilyn's tragic story. To the world, their rumored affair added fuel to decades of speculation. To Marilyn, it was yet another cycle of passion followed by rejection, intimacy followed by abandonment. It left her not with love, but with a haunting sense that even the most powerful men in the world saw her as nothing more than a secret to be hidden away. Not every affair in Marilyn Monroe's life carried the same weight as her marriages or her ties to the Kennedys, but even her more fleeting romances carried shadows that haunted her. Among them were her highly publicized fling with French actor Yves Montand and her complicated friendship tinged with rumor with singer Frank Sinatra. In the year 1960, while filming Let's Make Love, Marilyn grew close to her co-star Yves Montand. Montand was sophisticated, worldly, and importantly, married to famed actress Simone Signoret. Their affair began quietly, but soon erupted into a public scandal. For Marilyn, Montand offered the thrill of passion, of being desired by a man who seemed to understand her loneliness. But as with so many before him, the romance was never meant to last. Montand quickly returned to his wife, leaving Marilyn humiliated in the press and emotionally abandoned once more. The Montand affair crystallized one of Marilyn's deepest fears, that she was always destined to be temporary. Men adored her, wanted her, and even risked their reputations for her, but in the end, they always returned to someone else. For a woman who longed for permanence and security, this rejection was a cruel reminder of her fragility. Then there was Frank Sinatra, Their relationship has been described as everything from a close friendship to a casual fling, but the whispers never stopped. Sinatra was protective of Marilyn, often offering her comfort during her darkest times. He introduced her to his circle, invited her into his world, and even, some say, considered marriage. But Sinatra, too, was known for his turbulent relationships and his unwillingness to fully commit. For Marilyn, Sinatra may have represented yet another almost a man who cared, but not enough to give her the stability she craved. Some claim Sinatra distanced himself as her life spiraled further into addiction and despair, unwilling to be dragged into her chaos. Others argue he truly loved her but could not save her from herself. Either way, his presence in her final years added another layer of heartbreak. Even when she was close to someone as powerful and influential as Frank Sinatra, she was still left standing alone. Together, the affairs with Montand and Sinatra highlighted a cruel pattern. Marilyn was adored but rarely chosen, desired but rarely respected. She was always the secret, the thrill, the temporary escape, not the forever love. Each of these relationships chipped away at her already fragile self-esteem, convincing her more and more that she was destined to be abandoned. By the time the 1960s unfolded, Marilyn was exhausted. The studio system had chewed her up, the men in her life had left her hollow, and her own demons of addiction and depression had tightened their grip. These affairs, whether fleeting, scandalous, or rumored, became not just stories in the tabloids but scars on her heart. They haunted her because they all ended the same way, with Marilyn left alone, yearning for a love that would never come. Marilyn Monroe's life was filled with bright lights, red carpets, and endless applause. But behind the glamour was a woman forever haunted by love. The 5 affairs we've uncovered were not simply scandals or whispers, they were milestones in a journey of longing and heartbreak. Joe DiMaggio, Arthur Miller, John and Robert Kennedy, Yves Montand, Frank Sinatra, each man left a mark on her, not of healing, but of deeper wounds. Marilyn was a woman who wanted, above all else, to be loved for who she was beneath the makeup, beneath the glittering gowns, beneath the image Hollywood had stamped onto her. She craved permanence, tenderness, and truth. But each affair left her with the same cruel reminder. She was adored in the spotlight, but abandoned in the shadows. To the world, she was irresistible. To the men she loved, she was often temporary, fragile, or dangerous. The tragedy of Marilyn's affairs is not simply that they ended, it is how they ended. DiMaggio's jealousy became suffocating. Miller's intellect turned cold. The Kennedys kept her hidden like a shameful secret. Montand returned to his wife, and Sinatra never gave her the commitment she hoped for. With every rejection, Marilyn sank deeper into the loneliness that had haunted her since childhood. Her untimely death in the year 1962 only magnified the mystery. Some say she overdosed in despair. Others claim she was silenced because she knew too much about the Kennedys. Whatever the truth, what remains undeniable is that her pursuit of love ended the same way her life did, unfinished, unresolved, tragic. And yet, despite the heartbreak, Marilyn Monroe endures. She remains a symbol of beauty, desire, and vulnerability. People still speak her name, still watch her films, still wonder what might have been if she had found the love she deserved. The affairs that haunted her forever are part of why her story continues to resonate, because they remind us that even icons can be fragile. Even legends can be broken by love. In the end, Marilyn Monroe was not destroyed by fame alone, nor by the ruthless machine of Hollywood. She was undone by the very thing she chased, the hardest love. It was love that lifted her, thrilled her, and gave her fleeting moments of happiness. But it was also love, or rather the absence of true love, that left her empty, vulnerable, and haunted until the very end. And so, as we remember Marilyn, we must look beyond the image of the smiling blonde in a white dress. We must see the woman who searched tirelessly for someone to hold her, to cherish her, to make her feel whole. She never found it. And that is the greatest tragedy of all.